Okay, so the session today is going to be about troubleshooting. And let's see here. I am going to be doing a little bit of demoing if we have enough time. I have a live setup of a controller over here, and we'll be just running through some troubleshooting. It is going to be a lot of descriptive pieces, but we'll also, again, hopefully do some real life troubleshooting. You may find some of this is redundant. Some of it may not. And some of it, surprisingly, may not be obvious, even if you are experienced, especially if you're interacting with others. So we've got it broken down into two major parts. One is, can I help myself? So if you're a DIY person, very technical, and you just need a few nuggets of information to solve your problem, we've got you covered there. We'll probably fill in a few holes. And if you're somebody who goes, I don't know anything about this, just somebody help me, we're going to help you help yourself with that. Okay, so let's get started here. I am still David Moore, founder of Holiday Coro. Developed the commercial prop industry in 2008. I handle personally hundreds of technical support tickets each week during peak season. During the last week of November, it's not uncommon for us to have 300 to 400 tickets in our ticketing system. We are a very extensive system. We try to keep track of everything. We do everything we can to keep our tickets under control and make sure that we're getting answers as quickly as possible. We're going to provide you some information on how you help us make sure that we're not going back and forth 12 times when we could have got that answer to you the first or second time we sent you an email. All right. I started off working for Microsoft 1994 and started doing Windows 3.1 95 support. Awesome job. And continue that on with 20 more years of IT experience in the corporate world prior to Holiday Coro. So I'm a very technical guy, and as my wife likes to tell me, I always like to solve problems even if they don't need to be solved. So that's what I do. Love solving problems. I do just wish people could sometimes help me help them solve problems better. We're going to again talk about that. So if it's a not for you, if you can't solve your own problem, that's okay. We're not expecting everybody in the holiday lighting world to be experts and IT people. I know that there's a lot of y'all out there that are very competent and technically capable, but we also have a lot of customers who I'm amazed they get some of the stuff working. It's very complex sometimes. And even I'm like, holy smokes, they got that working. These things are complicated. And sometimes when things just don't work out, you have to get help from other people. So how do you get that? First, go back to the vendor of your hardware or software. Now, Xlights is free. It does have a Zoom room, and it does have a manual, and it also has very good support in an AI chat engine. So if you're using ChatGPT or something, heck, even I ask sometimes really weird questions about Xlights that I don't know about because maybe it's on the sequencing side where I'm not as familiar, and I'm always amazed. It does definitely hallucinate and make stuff up sometimes, but sometimes it's got enough information it gets me to where I need to go. So if your vendor is Xlights, unfortunately, you will need to use those methods of support. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of Xlights offering paid support. Now, if you've got a hardware vendor, a lot of problems people have are with hardware and then associated things around hardware. That's, as you saw in the survey, networking has nothing to do with a controller many times, has everything to do with making sure you can get your product to work. Controller's not functional if you can't hook it up and get it all working. With the network, that, again, may not have anything to do with the controller in the sense that it's the controller's responsibility or the vendor of the controller's responsibility. Check with your vendors before you buy anything. There are some vendors for hardware straight up, no support. You're on your own. It's community support only. And usually you can tell that because the product is going to be lower cost or cheaper. So be aware of those types of things. Holiday Coro is a full service vendor. We support what we sell. While we do have third-party or external support methods, such as our Zoom rooms or our Facebook page, we do offer either paid or free support for lifetime on our hardware for the original customers. Okay, so if you just keep banging your head, I see sometimes we get tickets from customers and they're like, I've been working on this for 4 days. If you're working on something for 4 days, please just reach out to us. I'm not saying the first second that something pops in your head, shoot us an email because, that wears us down too. But if you've been working on something, you've made an honest effort to try to resolve it. You've used our resources that we have out there and it's not complete or it's esoteric or it's kind of edge case, just, reach out to us. The contact information will be at the end of this session. All right. Now, if it's you supporting it, well, we have a knowledge base. You can go to our website, holidaycoro.com/KB, or just go to the methods under support for knowledge base. We also have YouTube videos. We are, as I mentioned, about to finish 100% of our rework of all of our YouTube videos for all controllers and long-range support. There are literally several hundred videos in that series. So always check with those YouTube's videos first. Obviously, you're going to be using some of your experience, and sometimes you can use things that are parallel, but not exact. So if you're an electrician or you're an engineer or something like that, often you can apply that experience. And of course, sometimes you just need help from a vendor. Customers reach out to us all the time, and they'll say, oh, this isn't right, or this model is missing, or I think this isn't right, or why does this error occur on my screen? And we do get esoteric stuff sometimes that is just not out there. It's not documented because it's so unusual. And if you are a self-help person, again, I highly recommend AI. It works pretty good. If it looks like it's telling you to do things that don't exist in the screen or the place on the menus or whatever, give it a little bit of possibility. And then if it's really not there, it's hallucinating. Okay. So how do you help those that help you? So if you're reaching out for support, now this applies to people who just have no ability to do any particular support. They just really need help from start to finish. But it also applies to anybody who may just need additional help with something maybe, again, that's really complicated. So maybe you're trying to set up your RS-45 or you got some unusual thing from 10 years ago that you're trying to hook up. So first is leave out the emotions. We're already stressed out enough. Most people in this industry that are on this side of the equation in September, October, November, especially in November, we're working 10, 11 hours a day. And I work 7 days a week, always during those months. And so we're already stressed out enough. When a customer emails us and says, this never works, or I'm really frustrated, I get that. I'm frustrated, usually because I can't get everything I need. So it's okay. We know we're doing everything we can. What will solve the problem is not that you're frustrated, is that we got the facts. So again, stick here to the facts. Don't put any kind of I think it should language in there. Sometimes people have impressions on what the product should do as opposed to what it is doing. I can't tell you the number of times we get tickets or emails submitted and they've got Siri and we have to spend 2 or 3 minutes just reading the sentences over and over and over again. It's so bad at some points that we have to take it, put it into AI, and then ask AI to try to figure out what it's read. So please don't use Siri. And if you do use Siri or other text to speech, speech to text, read over what you wrote. I get that. Hey, texting your mom, texting your kids, they'll get it. No big deal. We already stressed out enough. Try to make sure that that content really makes sense and that the word is not switched around or anything. That really helps us out by having detailed information. Provide concise and factual information on what you've done. A lot of times we get, oh, this isn't working. What's wrong? We don't know. We don't even know what the problem is. So tell us what the problem is. So many times we'll read through 3 or 4 paragraphs of information, and then we're just looking for a question mark. There's a lot of information sometimes, but it doesn't even have what the problem is. Tell us what the question is, and then tell us what you've done that might be relevant to that issue in resolving it. We get a lot of non-descriptive content. So the thing I'm using isn't working, and then we try our best. We'll go up and maybe look up your prior orders and then see that you've got 12 orders, and we can't figure out which of those 4 boxes, the boxes that you're referring to. Be aware that we need as much descriptive information as possible. So in these photos right here, you can see that there's some arrows pointing. Let's see here over here. You can see there are arrows pointing at the part numbers. We put part numbers on practically everything, except for the smallest parts. All of our controller boards all have part numbers on them. They usually have a pound sign and then the number. Give us that number. That really helps us out. That's the difference between us having to spend 5 minutes looking through your orders instead of going, oh, he's got an Alpha Pix. Okay, great. I know what model that is. This is what we need to do with that. Try not to use non-descriptive words like the thing isn't working, or my box has stopped functioning, or I tried to get them to work yesterday, or this stuff hasn't been working in a while. We don't know what those things are. Try to use specific descriptive words that describe the actual real item. If you don't know what those things are, take some pictures, send those in. We love anything that provides us real substantive data. Provide order numbers. So you'll see up in the upper right corner, there is a picture. We've been putting these labels on controllers that we assemble and ship to customers for years. So in that big box, it says order number clearly. That helps us out. If you don't know the specific model number of the part you're working with or something, just at least tell us the box is 135975, for example, and then we can at least have something to work from. We don't know if it's this box you bought this year or the one you bought 4 years ago, and that really helps us out. So probably goes without saying, but don't wait until the last minute. Be aware that we're not only just working with you. I know sometimes people believe that maybe they're one of 5 customers we have. We have nearly 30,000 customers. They obviously don't all need help at one time, but we have a lot of customers and we can't help everybody all at the same time. Again, we're always working hard. We try to answer almost all questions within 24 hours or less. If you were sending in emails, you were getting a reply usually within an hour or two. But expect to wait longer as you get further in the season. The absolute worst time to ask for help is November 10th through December 1st. Those last several weeks of November are just absolute pandemonium. So take that into account. It's no different than if you show up at Disney on February 24th. You're not going to wait that many lines. And if you show up on December 23rd, you're going to be waiting in lines. It's just the reality of it. There's just only so many competent, responsible people you can have that provide that level of support. Okay. Again, also help those that help yourself. The photos we get, sometimes they're just really not good. I don't understand how we have $1,000 cameras in our phones with cameras that cost $1,000 and we get fuzzy pictures that look like they're stuff from the 60s. Please take good photos. Consider the context in which the support person has to view those photos. So I've got a bad photo up here. You can see this one's taken at an angle. It's low resolution. I can't see much about it because it's taken from the top down. But then we take that same photo. Oops, let me back up here. I take that same photo, even though it's out of focus, at least it's showing me, hey, you have a long range board. I see you have an SD card in there. I see that you have a network cable plugged into the left jack. I see you have a long range board with no cables plugged into. I see you have 16 outputs. That gives me much more information about what the configuration is than that top photo. That top diagram, if you have an iPhone, don't pick these first 2 options for photos. The down res on them just makes them really hard for us to see. We would much rather you send some massive photo than some small photo. We have plenty of storage on our system, so no problem. If you're sending a video, we actually like videos. I don't know why we don't get more. When you do send a video, tell the story. Here's what's happening. Here's what I'm doing. I've configured this in X-Lights. I've gone here and I've done this and I tested it using this, and tell the story. When you're doing that, do stay focused with your camera on something long enough for us to see it. Sometimes people are moving their camera around so fast that we can't actually see the information on a screen, for example, in X-Lights or a screen on the controller. So leave it on there. Look at your phone, see what your phone is seeing, and see if you can see the settings or the screen or whatever it is, if it's lights on a board, whatever it is. Make sure you can see it also. Also, if you're sending in screenshots, we love screenshots. It doesn't take long to look at them. As they say, 1,000, words for a picture kind of a thing. Tell the story. If you've got a problem with your pixels, that's great. Don't take a picture of the pixels not working. I know the pixels don't work. That's what the customer just said. The pixels aren't working. They're not working. What I need is, what is the pixel connected to? Where is it connected? What is the configuration in the controller? What is the configuration in X-Lights? So tell the whole story from start to finish. And we'll talk about the layers that make up that process. All right. So most answers are actually already out there. We've been doing holiday lighting for years, and this technology is fairly mature at this point. Like I say, most of our content is already in the ChatGPT and other AI models. And so if you just search for stuff, it's already out there. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos in YouTube about X-Lights, for example. So look on some of these resources. Now, if your time is just not worth it, their customers making $24 an hour and their customers making $240 an hour. You may find that your time is not worth it to look up the information yourself. Something that's going to take you 5 hours to look up, which almost surely the answer is somewhere out there, probably in 95% of the cases. But if it takes you 5 hours to find that nugget of information, you could just do a paid support and bang, it's done. You just sit back and somebody's taking care of it. So you'll obviously need to decide whether that's worth it or not. Most services now, like light-o-rama and us, now offer paid support. If your vendor doesn't offer paid support, I can't say for that, but be aware of that. Zoom rooms. There are a lot of amazing, great, super supportive people out there that spend a lot of time in Facebook groups. So our Facebook group, the X-Lights support group, many other groups that are happy to help you. What they want is helpful information. That's the information we talked about before. Give them enough nuggets of information. If you see a post and it's got no replies, it's probably because somebody didn't put enough information in there and somebody just doesn't want to tell somebody, hey, you need to propose some more information. So post enough information, and hey, when they do that, thank them. Tell them you appreciate that. They're not getting paid for the Zoom rooms or the social media posts. And then also take a moment. I know this may not seem relevant, but take a moment to post, hey, I got it. It's working. And here's what I did. Don't just post it's working. That's good, because then 3 more people want to answer the same question. But then the next person comes along and does the search later on, they will then know what that answer was, at least giving them a nugget of information. So also keep in mind, like I mentioned at the beginning, support people are humans. We really are. I know sometimes people are very frustrated. They need support right now, but we are humans. We do have to deal with other people, and we want to be treated, nicely like everybody else. This seems obvious, but not always obvious. We can't see through email, nor phone, or post on a forum unless there's actual photos or video. So like when we're doing remote support for a customer over the phone, even with remoting into the computer, all we can see is the screen of the computer. We can't see if that light's actually blinking on. So if somebody is working with you, you have to make sure that that information is conveyed correctly. So instead of saying the lights are on, oh, yes, the lights are on output 4, but lights are not on output 6. That's the kind of stuff that's helpful. We cannot see that. And we also can't see if somebody is making a mistake. So if they're saying, hey, it's not working, we don't know what the thing is that's not working. So always try to be as descriptive as possible. And when that's not possible, maybe textually or over the phone or whatever you're doing, try to provide photos, videos, whatever. And this should all be actually fun. I get that the vast majority of this is fun. And a lot of those amazing events where you've got somebody comes up and you got the kid playing in your front yard, and he's dancing to music, or you get that little note on your front door like, this is the best house in the whole neighborhood, or my grandma thinks you're the bomb. That's what you're working for. Don't get too stressed out over this. A lot of people get stressed out over 1 pixel broken on a prop that nobody will ever notice. Trust me. And if you don't get up on November 26th or whatever day that is that you're shooting for, don't worry about it. The neighborhood will not implode if you're not up on that day and it's not perfect. So you could, of course, also start earlier. That always helps out. All right. Any questions here? Are you sure you sure have a lot more patience than I have. We do yell at the computer a lot that you never hear, I'm sure. Do you have a video on configuring a Raspberry Pi 5? I assume that's in reference to a Falcon Pi player. And no, Falcon Pi player is a whole nother world unto itself. And it's an amazing device, product that runs on one thing like Raspberry Pi, but we do not support that. I purchased 3 used Holiday Coro support long-range receivers from a Facebook group. Can I still use the order number for the enclosure? Yes, and in fact, actually, we like to know when hardware has been transferred. We have no beef against people who bought used hardware. We do not provide the same level of support for a secondhand piece of hardware in terms of the high level of touch that we would normally do with a first-generation customer. But it is helpful for us to know so that, one, we can take that hardware off of the account of the other customer and give it to you so that we know that that's where that hardware went. And we will absolutely support you. So if you need problems with the hardware, if you need repairs or anything, just because you bought it secondhand, you're not, temperature issues with an old Alphapix Classic, we'll reach out to you. And we'll get some other questions here. All right. So my wife's number one thing. And how does that make you feel? Always works with my wife. And it's a purely emotional statement because I know what she's telling me is something I can't solve. It's not a technical problem I can solve. And we get this all the time. So customers will insist. I worked a support call earlier in the week, and the customer insisted several times that this was working last year. It was fine last year. And that it should be working now if it worked last year because nothing changed. Well, clearly something changed because it's not working anymore. So something changed. Even if it's not obvious or clear to a customer, something has changed. Maybe Windows got an update, or maybe the firmware got problematic, or maybe it got zapped by static electricity and weirded out the settings in the controller, or maybe the squirrels chewed the cables and you didn't even notice. There's stuff that happens in the world that exists beyond what is completely obvious. So it's not even useful in many cases to, mention that it worked yesterday. It's a problem and we solve it. So anybody who figures out how to do a time machine so we can just go back to last year, I would really like to get that. That would definitely make a lot of my tickets much easier. Also, I think I mentioned this earlier in the X-Lights, back up your directories. In X-Lights, back up those directories, make sure they're on some cloud services for backup and all that, because that is how you can get to the past, at least from the software standpoint. That doesn't help the scroll thing though. We get a lot of my whatever's not working, and that's it. Literally, it's one sentence, usually out of Siri, and that's unfortunately not enough information to get us going. So this is where all those photos, videos, descriptions, all that. I'd rather read through 2 paragraphs of information and have 3 nuggets or 2 nuggets of information than one sentence that has 0 value that allows me, and then I have to start off with a question. So give us something to go on. At least give us a nugget to start with. We understand that you may not be an expert at this and you don't even know where to start, but at least tell us what exactly is wrong. Is it output 4 on this controller? That kind of thing. Also, sometimes, especially when we're doing paid support, a common issue is a customer will just unload a ton of information on us. And so generally, we're not too bothered by that because they're paying for it. But we want you to use your time effectively, even with paid support. And they'll tell us everything, like everything that happened. I mean, sometimes we even get dogs and spouses weaved into stories. So what you want to start off with is, what's a problem we can solve? Because we're technical people on the other end for support. We want to solve problems. Give us a problem. Start off with, this thing is broken. And yes, 3 other things may be broken. I'll give an example from this week. A customer indicated that a long range wasn't working, but then went on and described several other problems. Well, turns out actually the long range was actually a problem. It had been damaged by lightning along with some other hardware. But also there was a corruption in the X-Lights installation that was just discovered along the way, because when we were trying to configure it, it was generating an error. And, we updated the X-Lights and created a separate folder and ultimately narrowed it down to being a problem within a specific configuration file within X-Lights. Don't worry, we'll find all those. Once we solve that one problem, almost always, if you're doing paid support, the next question is, has this resolved all the problems? And then we resolve that. Here's another interesting thing. Highly technical people actually tend to be sometimes more problematic than, let's say, somebody who's not as technical. And it's mainly for one reason. The assumption that their skills are that strong can sometimes override a blindness to see certain problems. And we'll talk about some of this in a moment, but assume you're always wrong. That always works out well for us. You say, oh, this isn't the problem. Why are you worried about this thing over here? Because we check everything in the entire chain, and we'll be talking about layers of support and where all those things fit in. So try to assume everything is broken until it proves it's not broken. Okay, so now we're going to go into actual troubleshooting. So now if you're I get my help from someone else thing, you may find this helpful for some things. Especially for some more basic problems. This will help you kind of narrow down where your problem is. And most of these troubleshooting steps are pretty easy on A/B troubleshooting. When we get into the layers, you will see that there's a lot more complexity, and there's all these layers, way more than you think there is, trust me. And we will go through those, but this is some super basic stuff. You've done this before. And if you were poor like me when you had a car and you had always had to have it always out there fixing the car, and you weren't sure if it was the alternator or the battery, and you really didn't have the skills necessary to figure out how to use a multimeter and which one thing was bad, you just start swapping parts, right? Well, that's exactly what we're doing here in A/B troubleshooting. Now, A/B troubleshooting does generally kind of require a working thing and a not working thing. Now, that may or may not apply to you. So we're going to use this example. So I have here, you have a controller. You're using the built-in test mode on the controller, right, to get rid of anything at the layers above. And again, we'll talk about that in a second. And you're just doing the red, green, blue test. And the output of number 1 is not working. So they got pixels on output number 1, and it's not working. But output 2 are working. Well, great. You have at least one string of pixels that's working. And where are they? They're on the output 2. They're all working. Great. Okay. Well, what you do is you take those things that are working and swap them with the non-working things. So you take those pixels off of output 2, put them onto output 1, and you see what happens. Now, if the problem follows the string, so let's say, or follows the move, then that's the problem. So if we have pixels that aren't working on output 1 and we move them to output 2, and they're still not working on output 2, but the pixels on output 2 are working before, it's the string of pixels that weren't working. And you can confirm that because probably the pixels that we're working on output 2 are still working on output 1. So use this A/B troubleshooting. This can be used for a lot of things in the different layers. So it could be used at that controller level, at the pixel level. It could be used at the cable level. So maybe you have a cable and you're not sure if the cable between the output of the controller and the pixels is bad. Swap it. And I'm going to go through some of these different layers and the likelihood. I've kind of assigned a number of the likelihood of those things being a problem based on my experience. Network cable not working? Great. Take that other network cable, flip it around. If a controller network connection isn't working, great. Swap the controllers, put the IP address on both of them, take one off and swap out the other one and see if it works. Within a controller, you could take, if you have, let's say, multiple controllers, and let's say your CPU isn't working, turn off the power, of course, take off the CPU, put the other CPU on there. Does it work? Okay, if it doesn't work, you can do a lot of A/B troubleshooting, again, especially if you have a working known good item and a non-working item. All right, any questions here? There's some questions for the end here. All right, so now we're going to get into layer-based troubleshooting. So if you're an IT person, you're probably familiar with the ISO model, right? Like you got this whole layer of all these different things that all stack on top of each other, and they all have to work for the thing to actually function, right? So if any of those layers aren't configured correctly, have a problem, then it won't work. What you have to be able to do is track a problem through each of those layers. Test this. Okay, that's working. Test this. And just keep tracking it down. So first step is don't stop at the higher layers. So now I say higher levels. The higher layers are things like X lights. At the lowest level is your pixels. That's what you're trying to control. So between your pixels and X lights, there's a whole lot of stuff, as we'll see. So if your pixels aren't working, don't run a sequence to see why they aren't working. We need to start down at the controller level and use a controller test level, for example, right? We always want to start at the lowest level first, then work our way up. Sometimes this frustrates customers, especially if they're paying for it. Why are we skipping these steps? Why aren't you just testing my sequence? My sequence isn't working. No, we don't even know that your prop works until we get your props 100% surely working. We don't test the sequence, right? Okay. Now, there's a lot of these layers. Sometimes they require different skills because we'll be using, as we saw in the poll, we have people who have a lot of trouble with networking. It's a very complex thing. It involves a really broad set of skills. And if that's not your thing, reach out to somebody who has that help. We even have an entire form that walks you through the process that we can send you and says, what about this? What about that? What about this? And so we see a lot of those types of things. And if you get stuck, maybe you can figure out the controller stuff and the X-Lite stuff. Great. Reach out to your vendor or us, and we'll be happy to help you with that. Now, I hate to say this, but we would estimate probably about 90% of the issues that are brought to us where a customer's saying, I think my hardware is not working, my receiver is broken, my whatever I bought from you is not working. It's actually 90% plus not broken. It's actually just configuration. And the reality is these products are complicated. I wish they were not as complicated, but they do some amazing things. And with that amazing technology comes complexity and comes errors and problems and misconfigurations and stuff. So be aware that, it probably isn't the hardware. It just is the way it is. Okay. All right. We'll get some other questions and we'll pick those up at the end of Q&A. How are we doing on time here? Wow, I think we're actually ahead of time. Okay, these are the layers. I'm starting at the lowest level of the layers. So the lowest level, it's your pixels. That's the thing you're trying to ultimately control. I get that there's some edge cases. Maybe you got dumb RGB lights, or maybe you got AC lights or something like that. But in the end, it's to blink a light, right? So what you've got over here is you've got your layer. That's the thing that we're going to be testing for. And I've got over here the troubleshooting methods of ways to troubleshoot that. And then I also put my random rank number. Anybody who's ever watched the Project Farm guy loves the rankings he gives for subjective things. These are my subjective rankings of how often the problem is actually the root cause. So for example, controller output connection, like there's something broken on the controller output, very rare. One out of 10. 10 out of 10 would be like it's all the time. 9 out of 10 would be extremely common. So pixels are a problem, and it's natural, right? You got pixels. There's a whole bunch of little parts in there. Every one of these has a chip in it. Every one of them has LEDs in it. There are a whole bunch of soldered connections in these, and they're out there being, rough and tumble world, stepped on, stored in bad conditions, whatever. They lead to Rut's life, and they don't last forever. So a lot of pixels are problems. So the first way to test for those kinds of pixel problems is just what we talked about. A/B swapping strings. take that string, take the working string, non-working string, switch them. Does the problem follow the bad string or not string? Then you figure out if it's something further up the line. Extension cables are actually rarely a problem. For example, here on my desk are the entirety of all cables that we have found this year that are subject to go to testing for pigtails. This is just pigtails, unfortunately, that have been determined to be absolutely failed. Manufacturing defects. We buy hundreds of thousands of these a year. It's 3. They just don't go bad. And the extension cables are generally, if you're not buying them from a cheap vendor, I will say the flat cables tend to be worse. But extension cables are rarely a problem. But again, don't assume that they aren't. If it is an issue, swap them. Just swap them. It only takes a minute to swap them around. All right. The output cables. The output cables are the actual, you'd probably refer to as pigtails or dongles or dangles. These are rarely bad, as I mentioned. I mean, we're talking 3 here out of hundreds of thousands. So very rarely a problem. If you look in the end or something of this and there's a whole bunch of corrosion and it's been laying in the mud, yeah, maybe you got a problem. If you can physically see damage. The most common problem with these is actually at the controller receiver output connection. So I would actually say, like cables come loose, or if somebody was building it themselves, especially a lot of DIY builds, the cables are not properly inserted or the screw's not screwed down or something like that. Again, if you have a, and let me slip that off there. If you have a controller board that has plugs, these are kind of becoming less common, but Phoenix connector, you can literally just unplug the plug, plug it over here. So you can, if you don't know if the controller output is bad and you've already tested the pixels below it, you can unplug the plug, plug it over here, and just see if it's going to work. By the way, sometimes we get questions, can you unplug pixels while they're powered up? You absolutely can. There's never any damage to those, assuming you don't have any like miswired stuff. It can be a little more complicated if you have the flip or push connectors like these. You have to take the wires out and then, of course, put them all back in the correct order. But that is the way you would connect or check for output configuration. Again, A/B swapping. Fuses, there are 2 kinds of fuses. We have here poly fuses. So our first poly fuse controller was 15-something years ago. These have kind of fallen out and now they're back in style. Poly fuses are a fuse that just trips and then you have no way of replacing it. It's just built in. And then after a period of time, usually about 5 minutes, it will then untrip. And almost all controllers on the market today, unless you're super cheap controllers, will have some LED on there. And it will have a red light or something that indicates either the fuse is blown, or more commonly, a red light says that the fuse is not blown. So look for a light that indicates, if you see 15 lights and you got 16 outputs, yeah, you probably have a blown fuse. You also, of course, have the blade style fuses. You can pull these out and visually look at the fuse. Just hold it up in the light, and you can see through it and see if it's blown. All right, output programming. Now, a lot of controllers and receivers have a test mode. So right here, test mode button right there. This one, same deal. Test mode button right there. That's built into these devices. This is not even a controller. This is just a receiver. It can test the lights without any controller. You just press and hold it down. It goes into some test mode. Of course, we got videos and all that. And then you can test your lights here. Controllers all operate slightly different. You need to check with your vendor. Some controllers will test all possible outputs. So if this controller, let's say, can output 500 pixels worth of data, it might be outputting 500 pixels of data, or it might be only outputting data that is for the configured device. For example, our AlphaPix has a test mode. Actually, you can select which one. You can test all lights that are possibly connected, like 680 or 340, or you can test just the ones you've actually configured to see if you have a configuration issue. So the takeaway here is, if you're not sure if something is configured wrong, try checking it at this. Now, if you're not sure if this is working or the controller, just factory reset it. Especially with X lights and the visualizer, you could just upload the configuration again, lickety split. It's no big deal. Wipe out a misconfigured controller. It does happen. Sometimes people will touch these controllers or devices. They have memory in them. And with static especially during the winter, you'll reach over, you press this button or something, and it zaps the NVRAM and bang. The configuration is lost. So it may need a factory reset. So these things happen. All right. Controller boards, all the outputs are not working. So if you have a, let me see if I can pull this up here. There we go. All right. Now let's see here. All right. Come on, come on. So here we go. If you have a board, so we have a board here. If you have an entire board that's not functioning, you need to check, first of all, are these connections valid? Do you have power going to the board? Most of these boards have a status light that will show you their power status. So here we can see that this has a power LED showing that it's receiving power. And it also has an ability to show you there's a red light that shows up, a little hard here, a little red light that will show up right down here if the fuses are blown. I am just having no luck with that. A light that shows up that shows that the fuse is blown in this polyfuse unit. In this long range here, same deal. I don't know if I can get that in there. See, it's also got a power light. So look for these types of things. Make sure that those ribbon cables are fully seated. The flex system does require one ribbon cable per board, not daisy chained. Okay, so let me share our screen again. All right, what do we have next here? So moving up from there, we are now looking at the CPU. Oh, come on, share that. There we go. If your CPU is completely dead, not operating, doesn't come on, you don't see anything, make sure that your ribbon cables are fully seated. Make sure that there's power going to the boards below it. In the flex system, the CPU actually gets its power from one of the bottom expansion boards. So if the expansion boards don't have power because maybe your power supply is off, that could be a problem. Also, you'll see, I don't know if it may be a little hard to see here, there's a green light on the power supply that also should normally be lit up. So check for that. Now, of course, if you have a second CPU, then you can swap it. Dead CPUs are not that common. The most common reason is lightning or shorting through the Ethernet connection. Sometimes it'll blow out the Ethernet chip itself, but sometimes it'll actually blow out the entire thing. Now, network connections. So let me go ahead and share this. So on the edge, right here, you can see that there is a orange and a green light. And you can see that I have two connections because this has a network switch in it. This one is not plugged in and operating. It's not working. This orange or amber light indicates that this is linked up to a switch or a network. And the green light indicates that we're sending data. So if this is rapidly flashing, we know we're getting more data to it. So if I didn't know if this was working, you know what I would do? I would take that cable right here from my network and I would just directly plug it into the controller. That bypasses this entire cable. So that takes out your networking pigtails, right? And of course, cables right here. If I had $1 for every time somebody who made up their own cables had a bad cable, I probably wouldn't have to be here tonight. These factory-made cables are almost always better than homemade cables. Unless you're doing it every day, please use factory-made cables. And if you are using your own cables, assume they're wrong unless you got some fancy Fuchs tester or something, right? Happens way, way too often. How do you solve that? Swap the cables. I can't tell you how many times people told me, the cable is good. I'm absolutely sure that the cable is good, and yeah, it's not good. Okay, network switches. Network switches, this is an upstream device. So if you've connected your controller here to your home network and somewhere upstream of that is your home router, switch, hub, access point, switch, whatever the thing is that it's connecting to, those can be problems, especially really complex ones. We've done commercial installations where filters were put in place and the person at the AV level had no idea that they weren't letting certain kinds of traffic through the network and it was just blocking it. So be aware that those types of devices can restrict traffic. How do you figure that out? Bypass the network switch, plug it directly into a PC. Now, if you don't have a network port on your PC, which is very common today, go get one of those USB to Ethernet adapters. They're all of like $10 or $15 and use that. I would even have one of those just as a spare, just in case. That allows you to skip all the junk in the middle. So you're, again, taking out as much of this as possible. Now, what else could happen? You could have this controller here hooked up to this wired network. It goes into a network switch, goes to your home router or whatever it is, access point, and then your PC is connected to the controller through the Wi-Fi network. We now have two networks involved, and we have to get all that right. And almost surely we may even have some networking issues there. So what do? Again, unplug that cable and go directly from this controller directly to the PC. Now, we're not implying that that's the way you should run your show. Some of the stuff you just have to temporarily determine, again, A/B troubleshooting. Is it broken or not broken? All right. That actually happens more often than I care to admit. Now, here, let me flip this back on here. IP addressing. This is got to be, and it seems like that aligns with our poll tonight. People saying networking is the hardest part, and I'm totally with you on that. IP addressing is complex. Again, we can help you with that. We have a whole form that allows you to submit your information. Oh, it looks like, oh, there it goes. Okay, so the screen wasn't showing up there. The most common things are the IP addresses are the same. Every device on your network has to have a unique IP address. It's common for people to configure their controller to the same addresses on their PC. So their PC says, 192.168.1.50, and then they'll set the controller to that. No, every controller and device, printer, phone, everything has to have its own unique address. So each device, unique address. So if your computer is 192.168.1.50, great. Make sure that it's not that, like 192.168.1.52. Or make sure that's not also conflicting with other devices on the network. Now, we have videos, and the links will be in the slides here coming up, for all of our controllers that explain how to set up networking, not only on a direct connection, but also, like if you have it directly hooked up to your computer, but also if you're hooking it up through a network, and especially in using DHCP. Okay, looking through our questions here. Okay, so those are, we'll do those questions at the end so far. So our next layer, local PC networking and firewalls. Weirdly enough, this used to be more common years ago, but it seems like it's becoming less of an issue now, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Firewalls exist to block stuff. They inherently are sitting on your network and blocking things. And sometimes these firewalls think your controller is dangerous to something. A lot of firewalls are suspicious of things on your network, like Internet of Things devices accessing the PC, and that because that's not very common to access something. Most of the configurations for Internet of Things is you connect from your computer to some cloud server, and the cloud server talks to the thing in your house. So, for example, your Alexa, it's talking to the cloud. You're not talking directly to it. Or sometimes, heck, even some now printers print to the cloud first before they come down to your home network, which is weird. So, if you're not sure if a firewall is causing problems because of delayed packets or stuttering, and we'll talk about that in a second, just disable the firewall. Just type in firewall on Windows and then disable it. The world's not going to come to an end. You're not going to be hacked in the next 15 minutes. Disable it, do your testing, and again, that's A/B troubleshooting. It's kind of like the broken thing is the firewall, and if you don't have it turned on, that would be the working thing, presumably. Be aware that if you are having problems with your firewall, you may be able to ping a controller and it'll still respond, but the higher level HTTP or DMX traffic will be blocked. Some firewalls are like, ping cool, HTTP, meh, and then like DMX, what in the world is this? And so they just block it. So X-Lite's controller configuration. The other day, we had a customer which had already had a setup that was previously done. It was done in X-Lite's 2024 version. We upgraded to 2025, and something wasn't right. It wasn't uploading, or the configuration wasn't right. I couldn't figure out what in the world it is. Deleted the controller out of X-Lite, re-added it, just deleted it, added it back in again, reconfigured it, mapped all the things in Visualizer, and magically it just started working. So sometimes you can have a controller configuration. The most common problem here is people are not selecting the correct model. So hinkspix is listed as the brand, and then the version would be like 1, 2, 3. And then if you're looking at the AlphaPix, it's Holiday Coro is the brand, and then it'll be AlphaPix Evolution, or AlphaPix 4, or AlphaPix 16 Classic. Okay, so model configuration issues. This is a 9. Happens several times a week. Oops, I'm sorry. Happens several times a week. This is my whatever face or prop is not displaying things correctly. I worked with a customer this week, and they had configured their model as 4 separate strings, but the prop didn't actually have 4 separate strings. It was actually 1 string of all the pixels. And the customer thought that because it had 200 pixels and each string was 50 pixels, they had to say it had 50, 50, 50, 50. Even though the output from the controller was 1 output going to all 200 pixels, each of 450 counts. So even minor configuration issues like that will cause problems. And of course, once you changed it and said, no, this is 1 string, I know that may be confusing from a parlance of X-Lite's lingo, 1 string of pixels, 200 was the solution in that particular case. You can also have model issues. Every once in a while, we will bring, customer will bring up to the fact that some pixel is out of place on a model. And when we configure, I mean, we have 900 models. the chance that a few of them have pixels that are off, especially on a prop that has 1,000 pixels, it can happen, especially if it's some esoteric model and maybe the other person who bought it never noticed, and you're a stickler and you noticed. So these things can happen, and hopefully I think we'll have some time to review that maybe. All right, prop not playing correctly. First, use test mode. Don't ever test with the sequence. If the prop's not working great, go over to X-Light's test mode, and we'll pull that up and do that in a minute here. Sequence not playing correctly? Nope. Back to test mode. Make sure the prop is working correctly before you go into sequencing. And we will be talking about standalone in our last 8th session next week. But the most common issues are bad or wrong SD card. I actually saw some stuff on our forum, on our Facebook group today, talking about a bad SD card content. Make sure you have the right SD card and the right format and the right speed. We have a knowledge base article that tells you all the requirements for our SD card. Of course, if you buy an SD card from us, it already meets all those. The other common issues are wrong format, version 1 versus 2. It has to be version 1 for the hinkspix, and audio format. The wrong audio format is not in there. Okay, these are some weird issues we occasionally see. They're very low likelihood. Stuttering or lagging. We get this every year. Happens all the time. I won't say all the time. Every year it happens. A person says, I've got my show, but this thing is lagging behind the other stuff, or it slows down and the music isn't matching what's actually on the screen. So the controllers that we have, in particular the AlphaPix, has so little memory in it, there is no buffering. So while you may be accustomed to this happening on Netflix or YouTube where your internet connection stops, but your show just keeps on playing for the next minute or two, that is not what's happening inside your controller. The controllers today don't have enough memory to store that data and buffer it, nor is there any reason for it to buffer data. In fact, because of the inherent nature of DMX, you want data that comes in the second it's in there, or millisecond, and it immediately goes out to the pixel. You want no delays. Lagging or stuttering is always something upstream of the controller. It's the PC in almost all cases. AlphaPix lockup, this one happens several times. This was this week. If you've got a Falcon Pi player, you need to turn off the monitoring. It just overwhelms that poor CPU. It's not a very large CPU, and it's just constantly pinging the HTTP interface, and it confuses the controller. Controller firmware. So you may be confused as to why we actually make you ask to get our firmware. We're not charging you for it. What we're actually doing is making you go to holidaycoro.com/firmware. You fill out some questions. We got some warning stuff. Are you sure you want to update that? The reason we're saying that is because the vast majority of firmware updates that are done on controllers, not necessary. So there are some very rare cases where we'll go, this is definitely going to solve your problem. And then there are some cases where it's not. Now, we've had some recent issues with our firmware on our hinkspix where it says FW and then some number. That absolutely needs a firmware. But if you're just getting weird stuff, your prop isn't working, it's almost surely not a firmware issue. And we try to, where possible, let customers know, hey, that problem actually is not firmware. Let's look into this problem in a different way. Okay, so I think we have some extra time here. Let's see, I don't see any specific questions in the Q&A. We'll go back there. And we're going to do some X-Lights. Let me get my X-Lights up here. Bing. And share screen. So I'm going to have my controller down in the bottom right corner there. And tonight, what we've got here, we got some pixels. This is on cable. These are regular old pixel nodes, output 48. And I got another string of pixels here on output 37, right? 37 here. And these are seed pixels. All right. That's what we're going to be demoing. There we go. There's X-Light. So as I mentioned in our previous modeling session, you have to start in the layout tab by setting up your models. Those models must match the real world. The number of pixels, you can't, if you've got a house outline, don't just put 50, 50, 50, 50 and hope it all works out. It will not work out. You have to put in the real number of actual pixels. So I've gone ahead and set up this output 37, called it output 37 seeds and output 48 nodes. And I have gone into the controller and I've gone to the visualizer, which I think we talked about the other day. And right down here, you can see output 37 seeds, and output 48 nodes. Now, I have configured these. I've configured the controller. You know what if I'm going to do? If I'm having a problem, I'm not going to test it here. I can go over here, first of all, to the open button on the controller and bring up the interface here of the controller. All right, here we go. So here's our hinkspix interface. I'm going down a level. Now, I could test it at 3 different levels, 4 levels actually. The first is I could just simply go in here to the controller and put it into test mode. So when this controller boots up on a hinkspix, I just press the left button and it will go into test mode. That would be the first place I should really be testing the pixels. If they aren't working there, check further down the line. Check at the pixel level, check at the output level, check the extension cable, just like we all did before, what we described in the previous layers examples. Now, moving up a layer, we go from the actual controller interface in the test mode interface into this interface. I'm going to go in here to test outputs, and I'm going to go to local SPI, and I can check individual ports, but I'm just going to go ahead and say set all, blink white. Now, you may be able to see this. They're all blinking white. No problem, right? If I go in here and I say blink red, green, blue, now red, green, blue, white, red, green, blue, white. Okay, this is a good sign. They're testing okay at the controller level. We're not getting any data from X lights, so it must be that these pixels are functional. At this point, if something's not working, we don't blame the pixels and cables and those types of things. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say clear. I'm going to leave out of here. I'm going to go back to my X lights. Here is the most underrated tool. Tools, test. And I think the developers knew something because they literally put it at the very top of the options. Tools, test. And first, let's give you a little bit of a lowdown on what's in here. So first of all, it has 5 different tabs. So the first one is what actually was more useful back in the day when we did a lot of universe channel setups, and this was the place you would start. So this has all my universes and channels of what I've got. So if I expand it, first of all, if I had multiple controllers, they would appear here. I would see each of my controllers. I can then expand them. A check mark means I'm outputting data to that. So if I come over here, let me bring my pixels back into there. And I think y'all can see that. Yep. So if I start turning on these pixels, actually here, nothing's happening, right? Because those aren't the channels that are being used to control this. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. No, they are right there. I don't know if y'all can see that. So here, you can see I could actually even turn on, and X-Lights knows that these are red, green, blue formatted. So see here, it's got a red pixel. There it is right there. I'm doing red, green, blue. And if I want, I could actually come over here and I could say background, and there it's solid red now. So I'm able to test down to individual colors within a pixel. It's that granular. Now, this is all channels and universes. One of the numbers is the actual universe, channel number, and then one's the X-Lights channel number. So anyway, now you'll see that there's a relationship between these tabs, and we'll come back to that in a second. Now, the next thing is model groups. We don't have any model groups, but you could attach of props. So like, let's say you've got this live on your show and you want to test all the lights on your house for the house outline, and you want to just do red, green, blue for the whole house. Great. That's where you would do it. The next is the models tab. Now you'll notice these say unavailable. This is because they are not mapped. So if you see something in here that says unavailable, it's because it's nowhere to be found on a controller. It's not going to be operational. I can't even check it. And here you can see my output 37. Now we're at a model level. We're not talking at a channel universe level. So now I can expand this. Now, if we look at our pixel, I'll turn on output 37. There it is right there. It's white. Now, if I expand this further, look at that. There's my red, green, blue again. I can turn on that pixel, and now it's just red or just green or just blue, right? So why is that useful? Guess what? That's useful for figuring out where a pad pixel is. Okay, let's say that this prop had, I don't know, 50 pixels, and you think that the pixel is 51 that's bad. Well, what you do is you go down there and you would find the 50th pixel and you would turn it on. And there you go. And this string is 50 pixels. So there is the last pixel in the string, and it's lit up white. So I know that that's 50th pixel, right? So also that's good for models. So you're trying to figure out, like the back of the model says, you're supposed to put pixels in, 500 of them, and then it's got the numbers like 50, 100, 150. You could actually turn these on and go, okay, that's the one. I've got 50. It's lit up as 50. The number is 50 on the model where it in the board or the mounting Coro or whatever, and you know exactly where it is. All right. Now, here's another interesting thing. Watch this. So if let's just say I turn on this one pixel on output 37, and I go back over here to outputs. Look at that. It checked off this specific one. So here, I'll go down a couple of pixels. I'll go down to pixel number 5. I'll go back to outputs. Do you see that it's actually telling me that universe 1, which is the number in the brackets, and channel numbers, that's DMX channels 1 through 510, Here, I actually have channels 1, 2, 3, and then 13, 14, 15. So it's actually telling me, here's the logical pixel number, pixel 1, pixel 5. Here's the actual channel and universe and color of what I'm turning on. They are connected together. Now, here's a small representation of the actual model. So if I go here to output 37, so here's the pixel string. Now this string has 50 pixels. You can see that if I zoom in here, the first pixel is lit up and the fifth pixel is lit up. It's literally showing you the entire string of pixels and showing you which ones should be lit up. So you can see that if you just simply look at the model or the test model, it should look like the real thing when you're testing it. Now, where this really comes into play is when you have a model like this with like singing tree. You can go into those models, and unfortunately, I can't do this because I don't have it mapped, but you'll have submodels, and you can go in there and turn on that specific submodel. So you go in there and say, turn on the outline, and you should have all the lights on the outline turned on, and then the real thing in the real world should be turned on. Now, also over here, it's important to understand, I would say there's really two settings that are most useful. Standard is I use background color, and then the background right here. So let me go over here to models, and I'll just go ahead and turn on this entire string. And so y'all can see that. There it is. That's a solid one color. It's outputting data to all the channels. And you can see I could dim it. This is also useful for figuring out like what percentage of output is what the pixel going to look like. So, hey, what does my pixel look like at 50% output? Well, 128 is 50%. That's a 50% brightness pixel right there. And this is 100% brightness pixel. So I don't know if you can't notice, but you can't really even almost tell the difference. It's not until you get to the bottom and you start to really notice the number. Now, that might not be useful. This can be very useful because this is actually changing real time. So RGB cycle, ABC really means the color order. So red, green, blue, white. So that's what ABC. Now, you may want to move this little slider down here to the far right because sometimes when it's down here, it's a little slow and you don't see it change as quick. Why this is useful is if you're testing a whole bunch of pixels, all those pixels should be changing in the same order. They should all be red. They should all be green. They should all be blue at the same time. If you got one pixel and it's like always blue, you can pick it out in this particular setting. You can also do individual colors, like if you're trying to see what a color looks like. Like when you make a particular, like, this is kind of like the red and green make what color kind of a deal. So you can do that type of thing also. All right. Now, what's also happening here is hinkspix. If you have a hinkspix, there is a function, and this is especially useful for third-party applications. I'm going to switch over to my hinkspix controller. Now, I am receiving data in DMX going to this controller. I'm going to come over here and click the live auto update off the status page. The first thing you're going to notice up here is the received packets are increasing. And down here at the bottom, do you notice how it says universe 1? Because we only have one universe configured in this particular setup. And it's telling me how many packets of data. I think we've talked about this before. This is showing you real time what's happening. So if I go back over here to X-Lights and I turn off my output and I come back to my configuration here we go. Actually, there's some keep alive data being sent out. And I can actually see that by the fact that this light is flashing rapidly. So there's actually some still keep alive data on X-Lights going out. Let's see if we can kill that off. There we go. So we've turned that off. You can see that the light on the control kind of at the bottom that gives you the status indicator is turned off, and you'll see that the number of DMX data packets are not increasing. All right. So we've talked also about controller-based testing. That is an amazing tool. So when you reboot this controller, for example, here we go. Well, there we go. So when we restart this controller, almost every control, I can't imagine any controller that on the market that doesn't have this. This boots up and then it says left for test. Right for test. My bad. Try to read that backwards. Press the right button, and then that'll bring you into a test mode that allows you to test the configuration. Please be aware that not all controllers are fully configured for all the pixels they have. A common thing is I've hooked up 300 pixels, but it doesn't light up all my pixels in the controller test mode. And that is true because the controller may not be configured to output data to all those pixels. So here, so black is the color, by the way. So there you go. You can see we can select just using the buttons on the controller. Great if you're testing lights out in the garage. You don't want to do the whole set up the X lights and all that kind of jazz. Okay, we're almost there. I know I'm running late as usual, so let me get my share back on here. get rid of our X lights here. And finally, here are our different resources. So for us, you, of course, have all of our standard pages. We are going to update this weekend. I swear, really, we got almost all these videos done. The hinkspix videos, they're almost all done. We have the long range. If you have general support questions, just reach out to us at this URL. We have a Facebook group with several, I think it's several thousand people, and it's the Holiday Coro official support group. If you want paid support, you can purchase it there in hour blocks. And if you're using X-Lights, if a problem is just determined, hey, this is not, unfortunately, a controller problem. And how did you determine that? You went through all those layers, figured out where the problem is. You got an X-Lights problem, it happens. Go to the Zoom meeting. So go to xlights.org, click on the Zoom room meeting, and you can go in there. There's also an official X-Lights support group. There's also a lot of chatter in here. If you want one-on-one support, the Zoom room is probably the way to do it. How it works, you go in there. It's not, you don't have to like do video for your face or anything, so don't worry about that. You go in there, you raise your hand, you say, I have a question. Somebody usually will take you to like a private room. You'll then share your screen just like you would in a presentation. They do not control your computer. It's not, there's no safety issues because they cannot control your computer. They will tell you what to do while you're listening to them and help you out. Some really great people over there that dedicate a lot of their time to helping people out. Okay, now, session 7, let me get this going here. Let's see here. Hopefully I get that right there. Maybe a little off there. Okay, session 7 will be coming up on Thursday. We're going to bring in some different file formats. I was surprised by the last session. People said sequencing was hard, and we'll talk about importing. So you don't have to actually create your own sequences. You can import them. We'll talk about where you can get sequences, how you can modify their basic effects, and extreme sequences give us a test sequence to show you that kind of stuff. Then a final one next week after Halloween, we'll go through the whole playback. If you use a hinkspix Pro, this will cover like the FM transmitting and all that kind of stuff. All right, so we've reached Q&A time. Let me go through the questions that we have here. Actually, let me restart that. It's driving me nuts there. What questions do we have here? We have, I have a hinkspix Pro, would like to know the recommended SD card size. If you go to our website, go to the knowledge base and you search for SD card, I think it's 2 words, that will bring up, actually here, let me bring up the specifics of the, let me see if I get that here. Holiday Coro. All right, here we go. Just go in here, SD. It has to be a very specific card. Here's an example of the card. It must be below 32 gigabytes. I know that sounds crazy. It has to do with the number of bits in the CPU. I know you're used to your 64-bit CPU handling 1 terabyte SD cards. Not a thing here. So 32 gigabytes or less needs to be a class 10 or higher for the speeds. Otherwise, you could get stuttering. Must have an A1 grade. That has to do with the writing we do to the card. Also, you can see up there, there's errors that can appear. We talked about that the last time. So the biggest takeaway, 32 gigabytes or less. I can't tell you the number of times we get like 256 gigabytes. So make sure that that's. If I have a Kulp 16 and an LORAC controller, can I get paid support to get them to work together? I'm having DMX channel overlapping. I would say that it may be possible, but you would actually be better off going back to Kulp and asking for support directly with them. We'll do some third-party stuff. Usually it's in conjunction with Holiday Coro hardware. For example, you got a light-o-rama controller and you need to use it with it's your old light-o-rama LOR16 AC controller and you want to use it with your modern hinkspix controller. We do that. You want to use a light-o-rama S6 software, no problem. Kulp, you want to go back to Kulp or go to the X-Lights Zoom room maybe and get help. I think Kulp is a non-supporting client. I don't think they do like paid support or direct support. I think it's a community support only thing. I have several hundred Holiday Coro cables. They all generally work well, but it is difficult to pre-test them before you get them out of the display. I use a continuity tester. Again, as I mentioned, cables going bad is rare. People stepping on the cables and breaking the nuts off of them, common. Missing the O-rings, yeah, common. The actual bad cables that we see is exceedingly rare. I'm honestly surprised that they have so few errors. We have a whole system for testing in China that all of our products are required to go through in multiple test stages. And so they're tested prior to overmolding and then post overmolding. So it's just exceedingly rare. Like I said, I only have 3 of these in entire season so far that have not been 100%. Had a bad f amp on a string, take down the string. I don't think the f amp. I'm gonna say yeah, maybe, but the f amp has really not much capacity to take it out. Usually, when somebody's using an f amp, I see a lot of mixed power injection, and power injection has caused serious problems over the years. So if I ever hear like something's dead in power injection, I go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So keep those in mind, because usually an f amp and power injection are going hand in hand together. Some of my older AlphaPix controllers do not have the test feature built into the firmware. Should I get the firmware upgraded? I am not aware of a single AlphaPix, because I designed that controller 15 plus years ago. It has always had test mode. I will say that our oldest ones, the version ones, do not have the option to test both all configured and all pixels. It has just a one single test mode, but all of them have test mode from the beginning. In fact, actually, that was a major feature that was required when we developed it. How do you copy the contents of an SD card with the config? I recently tried to copy one, but many of the files in the config would not copy due to file names that were longer than allowed. So, when we were doing the setup and I was showing some of the things you could do within the Holiday Coro design tool, and I assume this is what we're referring to, because the configuration can be stored on an SD card if you've done the design in the design tool. If you're using X-Lights to do your visualizer to push the configuration to the controller, this is not relevant. There is no configuration on the SD card. The configuration is in the memory of the controller in the non-volatile RAM. But if you are using SD card and you're using that older method of the design tool, make sure to use letters, the names of the files that have 8 letters or less. That's generally best. And I'm not aware of any operating system today that doesn't handle long file names, so that shouldn't be a problem. But Robert, feel free to reach out to us on that. That seems unusual for us. I can't even say I've ever seen that. This is my first session 6 of this webinar. Oh, it looks like they've answered that. Lisa's going to contact you. Thanks for all the info. So thank you. So we thank you. It seems like that's all the questions. We thank you for showing up. I really love troubleshooting. I really love troubleshooting for customers who help us help them. So definitely use the advice that we provided today to help us help you get the best support. We really do want you to have a really successful project. It is in our interest to ensure that you have an enjoyable holiday. Your event goes off. You're not stressed out by spending the last 3 days working on a problem. We can't always guarantee certain levels of support based on the time of year or the price or used hardware. Some other things may limit the level of support. There always is paid support, and there's always free community support. So please reach out to us if you have problems, and we're always happy to help you. And again, thank you very much for attending, and we will see you hopefully on Thursday for sequencing. Have a good evening.